right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, as many of you know, I'm increasingly getting worried about a Bernie Sanders-Trump matchup in the general election and what that's going to look like. Trump is too. As Ryan and I discussed on the show yesterday, Trump has increasingly mentioned Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. He has a brewing war with his advisors as to how to deal with the Vermont senator. Half of them think that Sanders will be easy to beat, and yelling "socialism sucks" should do the trick. The smarter ones, including Trump himself, know that it's going to be a lot more formidable. The problem is that the professional GOP infrastructure has no other speed than socialism sucks. They sharpened their teeth throughout a decade of losing elections against Barack Obama, aided, of course, with plenty of money from libertarian billionaires and corporations. Despite my populist status, I still maintain some friendly relations with some of the professional elements in this town. And let me take you inside what's going on right now. The plan for the moneyed lobbying groups is to throw everything at Bernie that they did at Barack Obama. Except this time, it's going to work because Bernie's an actual socialist. Well, let me give you an example of a new ad that's running against Bernie in Iowa. It's from a group called the Club for Growth.
Sanders wants to be our 46th president, but he's nothing like the rest. More radical than Obama on health care. Bernie's plan gives government health insurance to everyone. His socialist Green New Deal, even bigger than the New Deal, transforming the economy to meet extreme environmental standards. And at 79, he'd be our oldest president ever. Even his age is extreme. Too old and too liberal.
That is a vintage Obama ad. And guess what? It didn't work the first time. The only difference between now and then is that healthcare costs have gone up and the situation is even more dire. The same is true of the coming socialism sucks attacks. I got word yesterday that one group is even planning on following Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, and other Democratic candidates with a bus painted in signs about how awesome capitalism is. Now, it's really like these people didn't learn anything from the electorally disastrous Romney-Ryan campaign for president in 2012. The bus tour, the economic libertarian message, fundamental to any socialism sucks campaign, completely misses the reason that Donald Trump is president of the United States. One of the things that help people who want to run a socialism sucks campaign always like to say is to American voters is capitalism has lifted 700 million people out of poverty since 2001, and that's the reason it's so great. Well, they're technically correct. But the problem is, those people lifted out of poverty live in Africa and China. And in the case of the Chinese, they were literally lifted out of poverty by putting people in the industrial Midwest into poverty. Trump understood that in 2016. He understood that a capitalism fetish campaign leads to a government putting overall GDP at the expense of the actual livelihood of its workers. Let's think about the sheer immorality of going throughout a place like Iowa, Pennsylvania, Michigan, elsewhere, telling somebody who lost their job to NAFTA or would lose it to TPP they should be grateful to capitalism. Take a look at a student. You can look them in the eyes who's nearly shaking from stress because he or she has to choose between eating or paying their next student loan payment. Or about a mother who wants to stay home, take care of her kids, but she has to work to keep up with rising costs. On paper, the economy is great. It may be okay enough to get Trump reelected. But he shouldn't forget that the most recent Pew poll, which shows that half Republican voters in the lower income bracket do not think the economy is working for them. That's because we live in a society now with massive GDP, but simultaneously the highest number in decades of deaths of despair from drugs and suicide. As Tucker Carlson said recently, the candidate who makes it easier for 30-year-olds to get married and have kids will win the election and will deserve to win that election. Remember that. It's literally that simple, and it's something that we need to hear a whole lot more from the Trump administration if they actually want to win against Bernie Sanders. And that's the thing, Crystal, is I'm watching this like slow motion train wreck in front of my eyes. Like you saw that bus tour. Yeah. Socialism lifts people out of poverty.
That ad was so amazing.
Can you imagine? Yeah, the ad like putting him next to Obama's portrait and all that. It's like
I loved when he compared it to the New Deal. Like.
Yeah, the New Deal
New Deal is really popular.
The New Deal and Social Security are the single most popular things in American history, and at the time were also the most popular things in American history. It's crazy because this is what they think is going to work? It's like, are you out of your mind? Romney lost to Obama was one of the most eminently beatable people in 2012. He didn't do what he was saying he was going to do, didn't really bring the country back out of the recession, home ownership, all that other stuff. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
And he won that thing by like 300 and something electoral votes because Romney was running on makers and takers.
And they misunderstood Obama in the same way they misunderstand Bernie, which is that people basically liked him.
Yes.
Like as just a human being, they found a nice family man. Like their caricature of him never matched up with how most people felt about him. And it's the same thing for Sanders. People in the media, and this is a Democrat and Republican thing, like in the establishment here, they have this caricature of Sanders that they think exists out there in the public, and it doesn't. Most people like Sanders. They find him charming. They find him trustworthy. They find him honest, all of those things. They also, by going so hard on the like socialism sucks thing with Obama, who was like a centrist neoliberal, they completely broke the argument.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they kept trying, he's going to fundamentally transform America. I freaking wish he was going to fundamentally transform America. Instead, he was always reaching for the grand bargain, and he embraced Mitt Romney's health care plan. I mean, so when you have cried wolf about socialism so many times, people look at this and go, this is ridiculous.
It's foolish.
Like, we're not buying into that.
That is not a way that you're going to beat Bernie Sanders. The only way, I mean, it actually came out today. Maybe we can talk about this later in the show, which is Bernie's team leaked that they have all these executive orders in the tank. 6 of them are immigration orders. One restores DACA, one is TPP, one abolishes ICE, the other essentially opens the border to any migrant who wants to claim asylum in this country. It is absolutely fair. if there's no screening, it's called an open border.
They want to increase refugees. I mean,
they want to increase refugees. I mean, guess what? The country voted against this in 2016, and that's what validated Trump.
I don't know that that's really. I don't know that that's really what they.
If you want to beat Trump, that is what. If you want to beat Sanders, that is what they should be running on. But the truth is they don't even believe in that. They don't even believe in that because it doesn't have to do with their economic libertarian They have more of a hard-on for socialism than they do. And like immigration radicalism, but it's and that is something that they don't understand, where their own voters that they purport to represent actually want.
Very smart primary politics, though, because the knock on Sanders, like, we can't get anything done. So like, look at all that we're going to get done right away. One other thing I'll just throw into this mix very quickly is Sanders put out a statement about USMCA. Right. On day one, I'm going to renegotiate it to deal with climate and to make sure workers don't lose their jobs. And so he's able to run to the left of Trump on trade and be more aggressive on trade. That is an election winner. It's not something that any of the rest of the media is going to realize or talk about.
It really is going to be crazy.
Next on Rising, friend of the show, David Pakman, tackles the latest developments in both the impeachment trial and the president's Middle East peace plan. That is next.